Hi there. On behalf of Frost & Sullivan, Microsoft, and DeepSeas, I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual roundtable. I'm your host, Sridhar Dara, and I'm privileged to be here with you. Before introducing our esteemed guests, I'd like to take a moment to summarize what we'll be covering today. During today's roundtable, our panel of experts will be sharing their perspectives on the most recent Frost Radar report on the global managed detection and response market. They'll also discuss several topics that are top of mind amongst chief information security officers, namely AI for security, security for AI-enabled threats, and identity threat detection and response. Finally, our experts will enter the fray on one of the more provocative industry debates of our day. Is SIM dead? Each of our panelists works daily with CISOs from around the world, and their insights are informed both by empirical research as well as continuous feedback from cyber executives and practitioners. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our panel. First, we are privileged to have Lucas Freya joining our virtual roundtable. Lucas is a cybersecurity industry analyst with Frost & Sullivan, with a background in anthropology and over 9 years of experience in market research, industry, and data analysis. Lucas focuses his research on XDR, MDR, and managed security services. Also joining us today is Jeff Root. Jeff is a global black belt with Microsoft, where he advises companies on how to get the most out of their partnerships with Microsoft and helps them ensure they're consistently at the leading edge of emerging threats. Finally, joining Lucas and Jeff is my colleague, Pat Joyce, who's Vice President of Portfolio Management and Strategy here at DeepSeas. His team recently earned Frost & Sullivan's MDR Competitive Strategy Award during the most recent radar report. So to kick us off, I'd like to turn it over to Lucas to talk a little bit about Frost & Sullivan's most recent radar report. Lucas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So first, as an introduction, I'd like to talk about the challenges that organizations around the globe are facing. This data comes from the Voice of the Enterprise Security Customer Survey, which is a survey that Frost & Sullivan conducted in 2023, where we had almost 2,500 participants from the US, Brazil, several European countries, Australia, and Japan. All participants are IT and cybersecurity decision makers in their respective organizations, and we asked them a ton of questions related to their security maturity, budget, challenges, strategy, motivation, etc. The data in this slide shows the main challenges to the security operations of global organizations, right? So the lack of visibility is the top one by a wide margin, as you can see. So this makes a ton of sense, right? Because environments continue to get increasingly complex as organizations undergo digital transformation and move their workloads to the cloud. So as a result, these environments become more opaque. Not being able to see the threats themselves naturally makes it much harder to respond against them properly until it's too late. Second and third, with a very similar percentage, we have a lack of human resources or security personnel with the skills to handle cybersecurity operations and alert fatigue. These are two very common issues in the market, right? For all organizations. The first one is the shortage of cybersecurity personnel. This is certainly a global issue, and with some regions, while some regions are more affected than others, it's pretty much happening all around the globe. So to alleviate this difficulty in hiring and retaining cybersecurity professionals, organizations are turning to outsourcing their security. This means partnering with companies that provide security services, which is also cheaper than maintaining your own SOC, right? And then the second of this issues is all about the disjointed security controls, right? So this kind of disjointed controls generate a ton of alerts that do not correlate the data with their other controls, meaning that they're much less efficient and you might be unable to piece together an attack. The issue with this is that it creates a negative feedback loop with the shortage of personnel, right? So you have a ton of alerts that no one has time to investigate because you don't have enough people, right? So this means that urgent matters won't leave enough time for the important matters that you also have to do as a security team. So what does MDR do about these issues? And let's go to the next slide. So this is an overview of MDR. At Frost & Sullivan, we consider that these are the essential capabilities that define MDR, right? So the first one is continuous monitoring and environment visibility. MDR is all about 24/7 surveillance and monitoring of the customer environment. Going back to the disjointed security controls that we talked about, the typical MDR service should integrate and feed on information coming from most of them. This includes endpoint, network, cloud, identity, threat intelligence, OT, IoT, and more, right? So this leads to advanced detection, since all of this information that you're getting from these various sources is analyzed and categorized in real time. MDR takes advantage of automation and machine learning to discard false positive and reduce the mean time to detect and respond. What this does is take care of a great number of alerts that are not supposed to be there, and it also generates new alerts with the correlated information. Things that might not look like threats separately, but when you aggregate the information, you realize that they're part of an attack chain, right? Once you detect, you need to have multiple ways of responding to threats. So MDR providers deliver their services through a unified platform that allows in-depth responses, including automated responses, playbooks, and also harnessing their teams of security experts to deliver threat hunting, incident response, advanced customer guidance in the event of a breach or an attack, and more. Another important capability is information delivery clarity, right? So this is the other side of visibility that we were talking about before. It's about having control and visibility through customized portals and reports that show the number of detections, false positives, and threats stopped, the mean time to respond, all that kind of stuff. But also, CISOs need this information to show stakeholders what's the value of their investment. And this is as important as any other capability, as anybody in the managed services industry knows. Additionally, we have a set of adjacent and synergistic tools and services, which is also a great way of multiplying value for MDR, right? So this is something that goes beyond the basic MDR package and includes stuff like penetration testing, security assessment, which include, risk, vulnerability, resilience assessments, virtual CISO, sometimes enhanced digital forensics, and better threat hunting or incident response. And what this does is also consulting engagements, for instance. What this does is it allows providers to have essential information on the customer environment and understand how to adjust MDR parameters, detections, and automations to enhance cyber resilience and protect the customer's assets. And the glue that holds all of these capabilities together, and what I consider to be the ultimate aspect of MDR, is a highly knowledgeable and experienced team of cybersecurity professionals. These teams provide the human factor, right? That last mile delivery and enhance every other aspect of MDR, multiplying the value of the solution. And additionally, we've already mentioned AI quite a bit since it can enhance any of the capabilities, but it also enhances the team of professionals and all of these capabilities as well, right? So for MDR providers in particular, generative AI and LLMs are great because they can train and test these models themselves using their own teams of professionals. And AI can ramp up the development of junior members of the team and save time and increase the potential of veteran professionals, right? So it helps both sides. So I'll stop talking about this because we're going to be covering AI in a minute. But because of all of these capabilities, MDR addresses many of the pain points that the customers have in the industry, leading to more adoption that you're going to see on the next slide. So as you can see very clearly in the graph, 50% of organizations that spend money on security services make use of MDR as of 2023, and a further 36% plans to add it by the end of 2024. This represents massive potential in the market and an enormous green field for growth for companies. It also means that the MDR sector will continue to be fiercely competitive, right? Since the new competitors are appearing all the time and they're looking to carve out their own niche. So talking about the competitive environment, let's move on to the next slide to see the Frost Radar. Okay, so this is the MDR Frost Radar, which was published earlier this year. And I think it clearly shows this fierce competition going on, right? So the Frost Radar is a benchmarking tool that we use at Frost & Sullivan, in which we plot competitors according to their innovation and growth. Each of these dimensions has several subcategories and dozens of different attributes. Growth, for instance, is the aggregate of a company's strategy, vision, market share, growth rate, growth pipeline, and all of this includes distribution strategy, distribution channels, acquisitions, mergers, and many other things, right? Innovation, on the other hand, is confirmed by innovation scalability, R&D investments, megatrends leverage, customer alignment, product portfolio, and this includes things such as how applicable is the technology to specific regions, industries, or maturity levels, the flexibility of that solution or service, additional services that are provided on top of it, the synergy that it has with other products, the roadmap of the company, and many, many other things, right? So in this case, what it all means is that it's very, very tough to represent a market such as the MDR one, which is incredibly complex, right? There are so many varied interactions and approaches from these players that it's difficult to provide a comprehensive competitive view. So one thing that you'll note out of the radar graphic is that there are several vendors that are similarly placed in terms of either growth, innovation, or both in a few cases. This does not mean that these MDR players are doing exactly the same things, because you can achieve a similar position with two completely different approaches, right? So in this case, talking about the innovation axis, you're going to notice that both DeepSeas and Microsoft are in a similar spot, but that's because of different reasons, right? So DeepSeas harnesses the advantages of a wide portfolio of complementary tools and professional services to multiply the value of its MDR service. DeepSeas excels at this kind of combined arms approach that is a growing trend in the MDR space. And additionally, DeepSeas has a vendor agnostic approach to MDR, meaning that it integrates existing third-party tools that the customer might have, and that provides additional visibility, correlation, and actionability across a wide variety of environments. This includes non-traditional attack surfaces such as OT and IoT, for instance, which is not normal, and it's something that's increasingly important in a geopolitical context such as ours. All of this provides amazing flexibility and creates a very synergistic approach that's supported by DeepSea's excellent team of cybersecurity professionals. Microsoft, on the other hand, provides a massive amount of world-class threat intelligence, all thanks to the high number of deployments that the company has across every region, industry, and across organizations of all maturity levels and sizes. On top of this very effective detection and response technology that Microsoft has, and the correlation capabilities that it has, of course, um, and the environments that it covers, including identity, for instance, Microsoft has been one of the pioneers of including LLM and generative AI technology into security. This is a great step towards innovation in both the MDR space and the cybersecurity industry in general, right? Microsoft Copilot for Security summarizes data signals, provides insights and recommendations, helps with detection, and also adds context to alerts and incidents, which is usually essential. This is incredibly helpful in, as we mentioned before, boosting all of the platform's capabilities, but also empowering security analysts. And the last thing that I'm going to say about this is that in cybersecurity, just like in many other industries, but I think this is more prevalent in security, many companies that compete in the same market or even in several different markets also collaborate by creating alliances, partnerships, and agreements. And in cybersecurity, sometimes this allows customers to benefit from the approaches of more than one vendor, right? So you're taking the best of both worlds. And I think this is the case here.
Thanks, Lucas. Jeffrey, turning over to you and Pat, I wanted to just ask you to discuss the strategic partnership and the relationship that DeepSeas and Microsoft have.
Absolutely. Well, Pat, did you want to maybe start?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, so Dara, thanks for the question. Lucas, you did a great job describing the fact that DeepSeas is a vendor agnostic MDR provider. Our strategy is built upon the objective of taking highly skilled, experienced cyber professionals, building a repeatable program, and then building assets, content, and intel that we can inject into existing investments that our customers have made. And we, strategically, we partner with best in breed providers. And it's been really exciting and interesting to watch Microsoft kind of maybe not so quietly become quite possibly the largest security software provider on the planet over the past several years. And not only that, but building really great tools. Our experts want to work with the best products. Our customers want to get the most value out of their investments. And, quite honestly, for those reasons, an alliance with Microsoft just makes sense. We've built a number of assets to help customers get more value out of Microsoft tools. We've built over 1,000 detection rules for Sentinel. We've built a whole flywheel kit where we can very quickly integrate. I mean, it's into the Microsoft API layer, which is, hats off to Microsoft. I mean, you all made it really easy for us as a managed service provider to optimize deployments through just make it easy to work with. So, my advice to anyone out there, and I say this to customers all the time, if they haven't looked at Microsoft security stack in a while, which seems surprising at this point that there's anyone out there, they absolutely need to, because Microsoft's leading the way from a cyber defense perspective in tech. And Jeff, yeah.
Well, I think where Microsoft comes in and what Microsoft really wants to do is empower people, and whether it's in our software in Windows or it's in our security stack or Azure or anywhere else, we want to empower people to achieve. Our partnerships are so fundamental to our success and to our customer success with organizations like DeepSeas, to be able to go out there and say, okay, we listen to our customers and we listen to our partners. What augmentations can we make, and how can we make this better, and how can we be at the forefront, and how can we innovate so that we can help everybody be better and more secure and more safe. And so the partnerships that we have, and we've really begun to focus very heavily on our partnerships with our MDR partners to be able to enable and provide the software and tooling to be able to go out there and protect our customers against those emerging threats. It's so key and so important to us, and certainly it's a major focal point and a major success point for Microsoft over the past few years.
That's great. So now that we've talked a little bit about the market, Microsoft and DeepSeas' relationship, and the importance of MDR providers as a conduit for successful cybersecurity outcomes, I'd like to delve into some of the more pressing and interesting topics of the day. The first is MDR in an AI-driven world. So Lucas, perhaps we can start with you.
So yeah, of course, I can mention a few things about AI related to MDR. What I was mentioning before was that it's not something that's going to entirely replace security teams, right? This is something that's usually used to augment what you already have, to provide additional capabilities to the analysts that are either junior analysts or advanced analysts. It doesn't matter. AI can help both of those groups. And so just like, and I will mention a little bit more about this later, but just like MDR can not necessarily replace your own security team, but augment it. I think that that's the same role of AI. It's not a magic tool that's going to make all your problems go away. It's just going to enhance the capabilities that you already have, right?
Right. How do we think about AI from a service perspective?
I think I mean, AI is the topic of the day for sure, of course, right? And I see, and we at DeepSeas kind of see two sides of it. So there's how is AI helping enable our practitioners? How are we getting better at security using AI? And we've talked about some of the points, like entry level resources are now accelerated. They can do more, and they can learn. I mean, it's kind of interesting too, as you're using AI tools, you actually are learning. It's like you have a coach that's connected with you as well as a scaling factor. So that's super interesting. And then Lucas mentioned it earlier. We see our most senior resources. They can take on a larger workload. They can do things. They can code faster, script better. And I talked a lot about there's an AI knowledge ceiling, my perspective, whereas experts, there is a level where you need to be an expert to QA what you're getting out of the platform. So you still need experts. I mean, sometimes, the paranoid thought is, okay, AI is going to just sweep away all the jobs. Absolutely not. AI is a force multiplier, right? Microsoft, it's called Copilot, not Autopilot, I think, for a reason. And but again, just for the same reason why I can't use AI to diagnose medical conditions because I'm not a doctor, right? You still want an expert cyber leader, using it appropriately to scale. But Jeff, we were talking recently. I mean, you've seen some really incredible use cases of how Copilot and Microsoft AI tools are scaling practitioners. Where are you seeing the biggest impacts?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we look at market trends and we look at we have a lot of folks that are coming out of school, a lot of folks that are feeling overwhelmed. There's Python, there's Bash, there's PowerShell, there's KQL, right? There's Splunk programming language, Arial query language, all these different languages, and they have to go and learn that, and they have to syntactically make sense of all of it. That's extremely hard, and we're actually starting to see people churn out in the first 6 months of entering into the field and trying to go somewhere else. And a lot of that is because it's just too overwhelming. Add to that, our experts and situations where people are expecting the world and expecting 4 or 5 roles to be done by a single role. It's so hard. So where we're really seeing that is giving someone the ability to use natural language to perform complex tasks. How do I look for this? How can I produce a report with that? Is this an incident that is a false positive or a true positive? Explain your analysis as to why. This type of information doesn't let people be lazy. It helps them generate those reports in a timely manner, and time is everything in cybersecurity. That they can then take that back and make impact. And when they can make impact, they have greater job satisfaction, but also when they're not spending their time bogged down in Stack Overflow pages, MS Learn pages, and Google searches, and they're actually then providing the information and moving investigations forward, that everybody wins, right? Everybody wins from that. They learn by virtue of working with the AI. In terms of the more advanced use cases, orchestration, the ability to have the AI do that type of analysis, to map it back to MITRE techniques, to have it do a number of different things, is incredible. Taking all of those key capabilities, all that knowledge, and be able to just touch on that in the moment is so massive for even doing things like analysis on outputs from PCAP files or from volatility memory captures or whatever it might be. That type of work would take even your most seasoned veteran time to process. So bring that down from minutes or hours to seconds. It's allowed for such an incredible advance in how quickly we work, how much more empowered we are, how much more quickly we learn, and just the accuracy of everything to ensure we don't miss things.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a bit. Oh, sorry, Pat, I interrupted you, but something that's really interesting is that you were mentioning about security analysts dropping out after a few months, right? Because that's definitely not what you want. If you need that kind of complexity, you're going to have even more problems in the future about the shortage of security personnel, right? That we were talking about before. So what you need actually is something that makes it easier to jump in and start doing the work. And this is what AI is going to do. At least for junior, it's going to ramp up that development. That So I think that's a really, really important part. Sorry, Pat.
There's
Go ahead.
just to build on that. There's a lot of really route work. I mean, we know. I mean, maybe not everyone knows that as an analyst, there's a lot of work that can, quite frankly, be a little bit mind numbing. It's not as exciting as everyone thinks. You're not, sword fighting with hackers every day. A lot of it's looking at reported phish emails. It's looking for common things. It's analyzing really complicated data sets like PCAPs, and tools like AI help take a lot of that route work off the plate, so you can do more interesting things. You can be more engaged with your job. So I completely agree. Huge plus and huge win. For those analysts out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the other side of AI security. You mentioned, Lucas, that DeepSeas, we run kind of a set of the services adjacent to MDR, and one of those services is advisory. So we advise CISOs and help them build strategies, and we're increasingly seeing requests for support related to AI security strategy and AI security risk. And there's a big undertone of trust. There's these concerns around can I trust the models, the platforms, and really how do I approach the problem? Well, there's a few bullets here, that we can cover, but first, security leaders need to recognize that AI is also a new attack surface, and we need to treat it like a new attack surface, consider the risks, build governance models. Just like any other technology, we need to build acceptable use policies, and really have a program so that around education, so that our users know, what are the rules of the road, and we're managing it like good risk managers. Data protection is a high concern, because as you're feeding data into these platforms, it's not always clear where the data is going, which can be a little nerve-wracking for a risk leader. Having a security architecture framework defined, just like you would for any other development or engineering team, really important. If you're having your AI build code, you still need to check that code. How do you treat your AI like a good engineer in a similar manner? And then posture management is all about, once you have your controls in place, how do you govern it over time? But I think where you source your AI from is really important, and who you get your AI services from is really important. And I, again, tip my hat to Microsoft. A lot of the investment that I've seen Microsoft make around, the Copilot ecosystem has been focused on building trust and data security into the AI platform. So, they've, I like to describe it as a moat. They've really built a moat around the AI models. So, there is a big difference between Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT. I think we all know there's an investment there, but that intellectual property, although it's been onboarded in some ways, it's guarded in a trustworthy manner. The last thing I'll share is there's all these open source AI models out there that organizations and research teams can download. You can't trust them all. Just because it's out there, you got to be really careful. I mean, there are masquerading open source AI LLM models that are just toxic. They've got malware riddled in them. So you have to be really careful about what your users are downloading and bringing into your environment. So I'll leave it there.
It's a really important point. Appreciate it. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, one of the other main areas of importance and growing prominence amongst the top of mind amongst CISOs is identity and the need to protect digital estates at the user level. So Lucas, I'd like to start with just an overview of some of your research on identity and where you see IAM currently and where you see it going.
Absolutely. So we're going to start our conversation about identity by showing some results of Frost & Sullivan's Voice of the Enterprise Security Customer Survey once again. So for anyone unfamiliar, roughly speaking, IAM gives organizations and their employees secure access to different resources such as databases, email, whatever you can think of, by verifying the identity in the least intrusive way possible, right? So as you can imagine, that's really important for the security of a company because it ensures that everyone has access to what they should have access to, no more, no less, right? That's it. So in this case, the question on the survey was related to IAM, was where are you in the journey of IAM solution deployment? And as you can see, the global average is that 56% of organizations have already adopted IAM, and a further 36% of organizations are looking to do it by the end of 2024. So this kind of paints the picture for of the importance of this area in terms of the data security of a company. So this also makes sense because at the same time, compliance with data security regulations is also a big factor for IAM adoption, right? So if we move to the next slide, you're going to see more data coming from the same source. And this time, the question is about the goal of using identity security within an organization. And the main goal seems to be preventing breaches. Then after that, it's detecting threats, followed by preparing for unknown threats. And finally, we get regulatory compliance. So this means that most organizations understand that identity is an environment that you must consider when thinking about threat detection, right? And that's one of the many reasons why MDR vendors should hurry up and include IAM as one of the core environments that it has visibility into, together with endpoint, cloud, and network, right?
Jeff, curious on your perspectives on IAM from a Microsoft point of view.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the way things are going. As part of Microsoft's Secure Future initiative, identity is at the forefront of basically everything we do. We realize and recognize that as we move into clouds, as organizations move into cloud, the attack surface expands. And the attack surface is now changing, and it's not about perimeter firewalls the way that it once was. Right, cracking the perimeter is it's still a very prevalent thing. Just it's different now, and so identity, the strategies that are being used are evolving all of the time. We are seeing identity compromise allowing for users or for actors to live off the land in ways that you would normally have detected once upon a time. But that identity breach and by virtue of kind of owning the identity space, you essentially have carte blanche to do what you need to do. It's not just machines anymore, it's workloads, it's microservices, it's a million different things that exist within a customer's footprint. Everything is attached to an identity in some way in order to orchestrate or move with that. But if we don't have a comprehensive view of what's happening within our identity space, how do we possibly prevent these breaches from happening? And as was mentioned in the previous slide, unknown threats. These are very emergent now. New ways of coming in and performing these actions and doing this only involve compromising the identity. The perimeter is easily bypassed. All of those fancy things that we have, unfortunately, are not involved anymore once that user opens that phishing email and subsequently has their credentials harvested off that machine. So this is something we see, and are putting more and more emphasis on all the time, both internally and with advocacy with our customers and our partners.
Absolutely. Pat, you and I, we talk frequently about the differences between, leveraging technologies for detection and response and actually building identity-based or building programs like an identity access management program. So how do you balance the the need and need for quality tools with the the need for establishing programs that can help companies stay resilient over time.
Identity is the new perimeter, right? I agree with all statements, but the challenge with identity is they're attached to people, so it's a little bit more, it's a little bit less predictable in a lot of cases, and you need a lot of context when monitoring identity related threats. So an analyst is more challenged when they see anomalous behavior because people are difficult to predict, especially when it's a human driven identity. For this reason, preventative controls, like Lucas was describing, a lot of that IAM like precursor work, it's even more important. So we talk about having an identity protection strategy or an identity threat detection and response strategy that starts with prevention. It starts with regular training and awareness, and then we can get the most value from detection and response technologies and programs. And that's really what it all comes down to.
Good point. Jeff, would you mind starting us off and just kind of discussing, just building upon what Pat was just talking about with respect to IAM, XDR, and kind of the intersection between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at identities is going to give us part of the story and a good part of the story. But what those identities do, their behaviors, and then all the correlations between where they go and the actions that they perform, that all blends into your XDR footprint, right? So hearing a lot of acronyms, IAM, XDR, MDR. So your extended detection and response in conjunction with your identity and access management, they need to work together. Those identities perform actions. Those actions then have some type of footprint. Being able to correlate all of those together is where we really see that intersection for ITDR. So if we don't have a robust set of capabilities to see what's happening, and if those tools that we deploy in order to monitor those different workloads and those different aspects, if they don't work in conjunction and provide that correlation effort for us, hopefully in an automated way, then we don't get the complete picture. And oftentimes, as Lucas mentioned earlier in the call, it's going to lead to breaches, and it's going to lead to unknown attacks and ending up on Bloomberg for the wrong reason. And so that is as we see it, from a Microsoft perspective, combining identity with endpoint detection, with SIM, with all of these different correlative efforts is the strategy in order to be able to see the full timeline and attack path that's happening, whether it was prevented prior to breach or whether it's post-breach analysis. All that data needs to be there and correlated for you to be able to take fast actions and to recover as quickly as possible if necessary. Pat, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I really like this slide, by the way, Jeff. First of all, when I first saw it, it's simple, but it really makes the point that how do you connect identity with the SOC, right? It's kind of been, the quality of use cases now and the ability to harmonize all the data has improved significantly. If I think back to what we were doing even 10 years ago, it was just more challenging because I think the tool providers, the quality of identity management has really improved, and maybe that's because of migration to cloud. So you've got more standardization. There's a lot more adoption of things like SaaS. So when we're defending an enterprise and we're looking at a SaaS application, a lot of times identity is the best source of data that we have because we're relying on whatever the provider's outputting from other logging, but we have control over identity. So it's just critical. And it does belong, in the center of so many cyber defense conversations.
For sure.
Okay.
There it is.
I've been waiting for this one. Yeah, we're ready.
So, as a reminder, we've talked about identity and we've talked about artificial intelligence. We've also kind of delved into the MDR market as a whole. Now I'd more like to turn to something more provocative We've seen a wave of consolidation in the SIM space, even over the past, several months. There have been some significant mergers and acquisitions. At this year's RSA conference, I was struck by how many people proclaiming the following, and it's a question I'd like to pose to you in very simple terms. Is SIM dead? Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I mean, as a global black belt with a focus on Sentinel, I can tell you that I don't believe that to be the case, but I do believe that SIM is a different beast than it once was. Traditionally, in my day of working in SOCs, you had people who worked in the SIM and you had people who worked in antivirus at the time, eventually EDR. Now we've moved into XDR. But you had its division, and you had sort of investigations going on over here. You had investigations going on over here, and really never the twain shall meet. People were collaborating. The SIM has really changed, and the way that Sentinel works from a Microsoft perspective now, so I'll be just specific about Microsoft, is by bringing the telemetry in from things that don't have a defender already attached to them, right? There's many defender products that go across many different workloads in an organization, from cloud right down to IoT. But there are firewalls, there are IDS, IPS, there are other things that we need to capture traffic from. And that traffic and that information is all part of the correlation story that I talked about just a minute ago. All of that information is still relevant. But do people live inside of the SIM the same way anymore? Some organizations maybe. I can speak for Microsoft. At Microsoft, just to give you some numbers, 6% of our incidents are generated by the SIM alone, meaning 94% of our incidents are from identity and XDR. And the reason for that is not to say that SIM is dead. The Sentinel is a vital piece of the XDR platform, but it is a platform, and that is where we need to go. If you look at other vendors in the space, not just Microsoft, everybody is consolidating to create platforms, to create an offering where you have telemetry sharing between a number of first-party products, to not get bogged down by APIs and limitations of those APIs, trying to make connections between different vendors. Customers who are with Microsoft and have multiple Defender deployments take advantage of this in a seamless correlation of information behind the scenes. The SIM is still vital in that, but it is part of the cybersecurity strategy. It's not what we build our cybersecurity strategy around anymore, in the eyes of Microsoft, for sure. But Pat, maybe you have a different take on that one. I don't know.
I mean, SIM's not dead. I've been waiting all day to say that on the record. So thank you. I finally got my moment. SIM's not dead, but it absolutely has evolved over the past 15 years, 20 years. There was a period where the platform for the SOC was a SIM solution, and we pulled all the logs in, and we did our best to normalize, A to B to C across these different products, and it was really hard. And I'm really thankful that we are where we are in the storyline, and recognize that SIM still has a critical role, but it's not the exclusive role. EDR and XDR, I'm not surprised by that stat that you shared, Jeff, that the majority of detections are happening outside of the SIM. What we see is, one, SIM, some detections, the only way to get them is with a SIM today, first of all. But second, the context after that initial detection, you want to be able to quickly look through all of your logs to understand the context, and being able to pivot back into your SIM is huge. There are a lot of compliance reasons why you have to have log management, which is part of a SIM. I think log management has become a bit of a lost art. We used to have separate products that were just focused on aggregation and retention of logs, and it kind of, with data science and everything, kind of all rolled into this one relatively expensive platform. And often when I'm advising customers, I just, we need to kind of talk through the building blocks. You've got log management, you've got log storage, then you've got frontline alerting. All those things are still needed. They just have a different role. SOAR has, response automation has also really changed the game. SIMs traditional SIMs of yesterday were just recording devices and they really couldn't take action. But you see more and more the SOAR platform is being built into the SIM. So these next gen SIM concepts are just different than they were today. I mean, that's certainly it. So I think is SIM dead is a great marketing term and it gets people's attention, gets people fired up for sure. It worked on me, but please don't. If you're a practitioner out there, please don't abandon your SIM strategy. Just recognize that it's probably not the first dollar you should place in detection, and don't overinvest. I mean, find a good partner or at least to find a good strategy where you're putting your resources in the right places, because there's a lot of great products out there now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
oh, sorry, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
I want to say I really like what you said, Jeff, about not being anymore at the epicenter of innovation or the center of cybersecurity, but still having its place. I think I could make a parallel here with EDR, right? EDR is the same. EDR used to be much more at the forefront of cybersecurity, and now it's being kind of replaced in that role by XDR. Well, we know that XDR is not just EDR plus, but it's more that EDR is being integrated as part of other security solutions such as XDR, right? And the same is happening with SIEM. That's something that we're seeing. For instance, from the customer side, what we're seeing at Frost & Sullivan is customers saying, no, I want to phase out SIEM in favor of XDR. But from the vendor side, what we're seeing is XDR vendors integrating SIEM as another source of data of threat intelligence of whatever, right? So I think that there's something to be said about the necessity of SIEM up until today, right? And the same with SOAR. You mentioned SOAR, Pat. SOAR is still at some point. I believe that people were saying, okay, so SIEM and SOAR are going to be replaced by XDR, and they're not being replaced. They're being integrated because there's stuff that you can do with SIEM and SOAR that it's just easier to do that way, right?
Yeah. Those are great points. Actually, just to tag onto that one and bring it back to AI a little bit. So we integrate our AI with our SIM, right? And we integrate our AI with our XDR platform. But I can have my AI run playbooks via playbooks. Like Copilot for Security will run actions. I can do so much with that. The extensibility on that is now I have AI interactions with everything you can do in playbooks. Playbooks and automations and Sentinel are incredible. There's so much we can do in there, and there's so much our customers take advantage of. So when you think about bringing AI into that to do false positive analysis, to do summarization, to take data and normalize it, do all these other things, it's incredible. And you're right in the call out, Lucas, about we used to say, well, we just put EDR on the machine, we'll be fine, right? Oh, if we have SIM, we're good. It's like everything evolves, and we are now evolving into a new SOC. This is a new generation. We're seeing a generational change, and change is hard. And we have to think about it as an industry. It's how do we absorb this change? How do we amalgamate that into what we do? And how do we not fear it and embrace it so that we're protected and we're ready to go and ready to defend? Those are all really key questions that we're asking ourselves, but it's good. And these conversations are so important to have in the industry so that people can embrace the change and move into a more homogeneous environment where everything is able to talk to each other, and SIM is a big part of everything you do rather than separate workload.
You're on mute, Dara, but great points, guys.
Yeah, I promised a provocative discussion, and it sounded like it was. But before we let the group go, I'd like to finally turn it over to Lucas just to give us a few insights about how folks who are listening to this or viewing this should be thinking about when selecting a prospective MDR vendor.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief about this. Firstly, I think it's important to understand what you want out of the partnership, right? When selecting a partner to deploy MDR. So what is your goal when deploying an MDR service? Do you intend to grow the security maturity of your team and eventually start using the MDR platform yourself with no intervention from the provider, or even replace it with an XDR solution that you manage entirely yourself? Are you looking to only outsource your security during weekends, holidays, vacations, night shifts, whatever? Would you instead like to permanently work collaboratively with the provider and get periodic assessments, suggestions in terms of what security solutions you should update or have compliance recommendations from them? Or would you rather completely outsource 100% of your security all the time, right? And this is something that MDR can do, unlike AI, like we were mentioning before. So overall, there are dozens of different possibilities, and there are many vendors that can do one or more of these well, but not everyone can do all of them, right? So keep your goals in mind at all times and discuss these with your potential providers, right? Secondly, consider your environment and your integration needs. We were talking about identity before as an increasingly important part of security because of the dissolution of the traditional security perimeter, right? We also talk about capabilities such as third-party integration or OT and IoT visibility, right? So all of this, what it does, it provides additional flexibility. If you're moving most of your workloads to the cloud, then you'll probably need deep cloud visibility. If you have hundreds of OT and IoT devices, you'll need that kind of integration, that kind of visibility over that, right? So not all MDR providers have everything, but what differentiates top players from the rest is that they have a very wide coverage, right? And also, third party, Pat, you were mentioning third party before as a great capability of DeepSeas, and I mentioned it as well. Sorry. So this is really important because if you already have existing security solutions and tools that you want to continue using, and you don't want to do a complete rip and replace, you better ensure that your MDR provider of choice allows that, right? Because not all do. And it's okay if you don't care about that. Maybe you just think it's easier to just do a rip and replace and go all in one vendor. But just this is something to consider, right? Thirdly, adjacent service offerings are becoming increasingly important. So as more MDR providers realize the benefits that this brings to the table, MDR is becoming something that's no longer about 24/7 monitoring, detection and response, threat hunting, and incident response, right? It's more about helping customers understand how to protect their data while undergoing digital transformation, helping them in developing, comprehensive and cohesive security strategies. And that involves periodic maturity readiness, maturity, vulnerability, and readiness assessments, which are also essential as a CISO when you want to show the value of your investments to your company stakeholders, right? And show the improvement and increased resilience over the quarters. So always keep in mind that MDR can be complemented and customized to your needs, and also choose a provider according to that, to the adjacent services that they have, right? And finally, we go back to AI once again, which is something that many security solutions have been using for a while to correlate information, discard false positives, and automate actions, as we have mentioned. But the new thing here is generative AI and LLMs, of course. So I will just repeat something that I always said, but AI is not going to replace cybersecurity professionals, right? It will enhance them. It will unlock their potential. It will make their lives easier. That's it. This is not a generic. Also, something. I mean, this is important to consider. These are not generic AI models that are trained on inconsistent threat data, or at least they shouldn't be, right? It will not cause hallucinations. But this is not a magic solution either, right? This will not make all problems go away. So it is increasingly it's increasingly important to consider it as a tool in the arsenal of cybersecurity companies against threat actors, because these threat actors are still going to leverage AI, right? They are going to use it as a tool. So you have to defend yourself with a similar or a better tool, right? So when you're selecting an MDR provider, always consider the company's attitude to AI, its strategy to implement it, to include it within the platform, and the ability to empower analysts to do their job through AI, right? AI is a tool, but in the short term, it will be a tool that you cannot afford to discard.
That's a great way to put it. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and I'd like to thank Pat, Lucas, and Jeff for being our experts today. On behalf of DeepSeas, Frost & Sullivan, and Microsoft, thank you so much for joining. And we'll make sure to include some resources for you to peruse at your leisure in the description of this video. Once again, on behalf of DeepSeas, Microsoft, and Frost & Sullivan, thank you for your time.